Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Peggy Stepanek, and I am one of the 6 regional sales managers that represent Assurity. I first want to thank you and welcome you to our webinar, Women Mean Business, Actionable Insights on What Matters Most. Today's topic is one that financial professionals have been discussing for several years, and yet there is a disparity in the number of women who own life insurance. There are overwhelming statistics about the lack of ownership of life insurance. An alarming 44% do not have any life insurance at all. As you know, Life Insurance Awareness Month is right around the corner. Life Happens dedicates the month of September to help educate the public about why life insurance ownership is important. For the 3rd year in a row, Life Happens has chosen Danica Patrick as their spokesperson. Not only does she resonate with both men and women, she is a good representation of the diverse women's market today. At Assurity, we are focusing on this underserved market. A few important facts: women are more likely to start a business, control the household budget, drive family health care decisions, and to care for adult children or their elderly parents. Let's cover what you're going to walk away with today. First, we're going to spend time learning about the untapped market. We're going to talk about prospecting. Are you looking in the right places? Where else should you be looking? The words you use are important. We'll identify ways to refine the questions you are asking. And you're also going to be introduced to our new sales and marketing tools. To get us started and to take us deeper into the conversation, Scott Zagurski, our Senior Director of Marketing, is going to lead the way.
Hi, Peggy. Thanks
Hi.
for having me today.
Absolutely.
This topic is one that's near and dear to my heart as a marketer. We're always looking for new ways to address old problems. And one of the problems we consistently have in life insurance is kind of a flat market in general. But when we dig a little bit deeper in one of the stats that you showed, which that 44% of women don't have any life insurance at all, obviously there's an unmet need.
Right.
We see on this particular slide that only 1 in 3 women own individual life insurance in general. And when you look at the stats on industry publications like LIMRA, you'll see that the average face amount that a woman has is much lower than the average male. From the latest studies, we're showing that the average face amount for a woman was $129,000 compared to men, which was $161,000. Most of the time, you'll know in today's day and age that there really isn't a variance that big of need between males and females. But for some reason, women are being undersold right now as far as the amount that they need for coverage, and ultimately they don't have enough coverage if almost half of them don't have any insurance at all. Our next stat, in general demographics, and we just don't want to stat everybody to death today. We want to actually get into some meat and some scenarios, but the change of the finances in the family household, those changes over the last generations are real. And 42% of women are the primary breadwinners of their household. And in other situation, 22% would be part of dual income households. So 4% of household earnings decisions, as you mentioned, the breadwinning has changed over the last generation or two from females being the primary force in financial security for their families. And yet they are extremely underserved, as we've said. The next stat that I wanted to go over, because it's an important mark, and we're going to focus a little bit later, more on this later on, is that 11.6 million women own and started businesses in the United States. This is a great source of prospecting, a great source of need, and also just really shows how great a presence that females now are in the business world. That's something that stereotypically in the past, as we'll talk about, has changed a lot. And it's something that we haven't changed much in our approach in our industry, our conversations in our industry, but it's something that we need to really look at and put in the full forefront of our prospecting and marketing concepts if we're going to increase sales in a market that is flat. When we look at that number, and when we throw huge numbers out here, I am terrible at movie analogies, but ultimately it ends up being my Dr. Evil number, 11.6 million from the Austin Powers series. And to break it down, right, it's 827 new women-owned businesses are started up every day. Those prospects are in your neighborhoods, they're selling you things, they're working in your communities, and ultimately we need to talk more on how we can reach them.
So this is a slide, and on this slide there's a bunch of faces on here that I think that you'll all recognize. Families are constructed very differently today. I'm sure you guys will all agree. Our slides really don't represent reality of today's families. There really is no one picture that represents all moms. Scott, let's talk about what this means to our advisors.
Well, for our advisors, we definitely, and we will steal the title, we're definitely looking at more modern families. We've talked about the shift in financial obligations. People aren't just saying, honey, I'm home and being ready to serve dinner to their husband in a cardigan anymore.
No pipe and slippers.
There is no pipe and slippers anymore. Or is there Alice the maid, right, from the previous slide that could take care of everybody, including Tiger for some reason. But ultimately, as the workforce has shifted, as family dynamics have shifted, as the construct of marriage has shifted, we need to go beyond these shallow stereotypes that we've had in the past and also look at age demographics that have shifted. Ultimately, when somebody is becoming a mother and when they're becoming married is a little different than it was in the past. So making sure you're tuning into these life events as you start looking at prospecting and starting your conversations is extremely important. The first set of prospects that we really want to dial into here are millennial moms. And we're going to talk in a lot of these buzzword bingo terms. Millennials ends up being everybody's favorite thing to zero in on. And social media on the slide is another one, right? But, what does it really and truly mean to you? You all know when you're selling that people do business with people they like, know, and trust. That isn't changing from one demographic to another. But who they initially rely on for that first bit of advice or who to reach out to has changed. In my generation, I'm Generation X, I'm getting older. We always relied on our parents to find out who to reach out to for financial advice, who to be that first agent contact, or if I had questions on financial services, I'd kind of go who they went with and start a relationship there. For the millennial mom is not that. They don't believe their parents have the best answers. They're going to Google something way before they call mom or dad. And ultimately, they're going to look on their social media channels and see if there's any peer advice or just throw a question out there and asking, hey, have you dealt with this particular topic? The last thing you want to do as an agent when you're going out in social media is push products. Nobody wants to hear your products. Nobody wants to hear about that until they're ready, which is going to be down the line. So think of it more as a multi-step process. If you're not pushing product, really, what can you do on social media? You need to be able to identify with causes, community involvement, and start conversations around those things that help you garner trust, those things that you believe in, that they believe in. You need to look for those causes that ultimately give you a common bond. And after several of those conversations start up, conversations around life events. I know there was, for me, being a parent for the first time, which is, one of your major life event triggers when you're talking about millennial moms. It's not about covering them with life insurance. It's about what they should be expecting and what advice you could give just about being a parent in general. For me, the weirdest thing was nobody ever taught me how to cut my kids' fingernails. It was one of those weird things. They were paper thin. There was no book that could have prepared me for that advice. And now you can watch a video of people doing it online, which is weird. Life has really changed on the social aspect. But I think you get my point, in which it's having conversations that are real, showing your authenticity way before you get into the actual need around life insurance. You're starting those conversations by showing how you relate. And that's really what you need to be focused on. Because moms today start a bit older than they have in the past. The average age for a first-time mother is going to be 28 years old. And we're talking about, when we talk about millennial women, right, we're talking about those born between 1981 and 1996. And they accounted for 82% of the births in the United States in 2016. So when you talk about untapped market potential, when you talk about underserved market, when you talk about the numbers, if you look at the slice of, where are they at in that 44% of people who don't have insurance or underserved, it's a great place to start. So you don't want to necessarily start on these places by purchasing lists. You want to get involved with your community, and you want to get out on social media and show how you can start those conversations on anything but product. The next prospect that we're going to dive into, again, buzzword bingo if you're filling out your cards at home, ends up being your mompreneur. Your mompreneur is the folks that are out there, these female business owners. They're starting things up. They are working from home sometimes out of necessity. They could be working at home because they're caring for an ailing parent. They could be working from home because they've taken a step back to help raise children in their early stages. Or they just could be out there trying to find the American dream like everybody else. But these people who are entrepreneurs are very smart. They're very educated on their business, but a lot of times they don't know the first thing about what they need to do to protect themselves, their business investment. And if they're the sole breadwinner, in a lot of cases that we see now, or they're re-entering the workforce and their income is a little less than what it was in the past, that's where life insurance is so important if something would happen to them, and where you need to be able to have these conversations, but where to find these people. Social media here is a little bit different, and online is a little bit different. You can go buy your list at your local list vendor, or you can just look up on Google reviews and find businesses in your area. It's just as easy to get and gather a list that way. You can look those folks up on Google Maps and start aggregating that data yourself. Etsy is a great place to find predominantly female business owners. They're working out of their home. They are either doing a side job or a full-time gig, and it's a great place, again, to find those lists of people. You can always look at different business clubs, organizations, and associations in your local area. Your Chamber of Commerce is a great place. But last but not least, on just prospecting lists, manta.com/business is still one of the most comprehensive list services, and it's free if you just go out there and start looking up and filtering in your immediate area. Where do I find small businesses? A lot of these aren't going to give you the general proprietor of who owns the business on these lists. But as you start looking at some of the topics versus others, again, not to be stereotypical, but typically there aren't a lot of men going down the Etsy road. You're much more likely to find females in this space. And looking at these businesses or women's associations around these businesses as you do searches to find out more prior to prospecting, it's a great place to start. So as more and more people enter the gig economy, which they are every day, make sure that you're keeping up your list in your local area and prospecting away. The last buzzword that we're going to throw at you today is one that ends up being kind of weird. It's otherhood, which is, of course, we're taking the motherhood out of it. There are more and more single women or women in relationships who just are choosing not to have kids today. The trend is to have children either much later in life or not to have children at all. But that doesn't mean that these people don't have things to protect. Now, it could be part of the reason why there is less, insurance being, coverage for females. But if they are in the otherhood mode, which is they are pursuing their career first, they are looking at expanding the relationships that they have, personally with their spouse or partner, and then ultimately they're looking at having kids later in life. They are always a big part of that household income then. So protecting their household income, there are a huge percentage of homeowners in this space, and ultimately maybe having a child isn't their first life event that's going to stir interest in purchasing or needing the protection. It's home ownership that the otherhood is where you want to focus on. So in review, you always need to look at focusing on the basics. Look at your current client base. Who have you covered that is on the male-only realm? And ultimately, who haven't you asked on the other side of that table? It's always the easiest place to start. Be an active listener on social media. A lot of us men aren't the best active listeners. We like to put our 2 cents in. But sit back and look for those life events. Look for those things that you can have meaningful conversations with and not worry about product pushes. Look for referrals through your local associations, professional networking groups, volunteer to speak at events on topics, and ultimately make sure you continue to reach out. So I think from my perspective, the ways that you've reached out have changed. Maybe the topics that you reach out on will continue to change, but ultimately when working with women, know that what you've done in the past isn't necessarily going to work today. Now I'm going to push it back to Peggy so she can talk more about really what and how you need to engage in these discussions.
So great. Thanks, Scott, for the insights. Now, as Scott kind of referred to, we're going to talk about how to effectively work with your female clients. Studies show that many women prioritize their financial matters immediately at hand. So they're worried about how they're going to pay daycare or how they're going to pay the rent. Those things that are really immediate and in the forefront. They really don't make time to focus on longer-term financial planning. This means there are really limited conversations that are taking place either with their partners or their advisors around long-term planning. Remember our pictures of Carol Brady and June Cleaver? One of the things that is really, really important that you don't do is assume or generalize what that financial contribution she's making. So it's really important to start with questions, and the key is to ask questions that put you in the position of understanding what her concerns are. This will not only help you build a solution for her, but it will more importantly gain and build her trust. When asking questions, be sure to give her time to respond. It's really easy to be in a hurry and be unrelaxed and a bit agitated. But what you're going to find is if you approach the conversation, let her do the talking and you do the listening, and give her time to respond to those questions, you're going to be able to work with her better. If you don't, she's going to feel dismissed, and she's going to feel that her concerns aren't being addressed and that she's just not important and that you're just not that interested. Here are some questions to think about. The first couple may seem obvious to you, but here's the deal. You may hear some things or find out some things you don't know about her, and quite frankly, you're going to get some things that you're not going to expect. So really, kind of in our household, and this is kind of what my husband says, this really comes down to who's going to do it without me. So really, who relies on her care for support? How would it happen if she weren't there? How would it happen if she was too sick? If she's a non-working spouse, this is where you drill down and teach her how to calculate her own economic value. And this may be an education for both her partner or her spouse on how to do that. There's a website called salary.com, and it's driven by IBM and it's updated on an annual basis, but that's a great way to figure out the economic contribution of a non-working spouse. she probably has concerns around health care now and also in retirement. And then one important question also is, how long does she plan to work? And are there going to be any breaks in her career? So in other words, is she going to have to leave her career to go help care for either a child or an elderly parent or a relative? Those are all important pieces that you need to understand so you can actually help her formulate a financial plan long term. So after you understand what her concerns are, you can then help her understand that there are products such as life insurance to help mitigate the risk that she is concerned with. This is where you can show the family how to place the human economic value on her contributions, even his contributions, and put the right amount of life insurance in force, right? The earlier slides talked about the low face amounts of both men and women. So if we spend time in a conversation, we're going to be able to help your client understand the right amount of insurance to put in force. Getting to know the concerns, not only getting to know the concerns and listen, not only help you get to know the situation, but more importantly, gain the trust. Remember, 62% of women will change their financial advisor. So following this approach will not only help you keep her as a client, but also lead you to additional referrals. So this slide talks about conversation starters and overcoming objections, and these are new tools that we are going to put in place to help guide you through some of the conversations and get you on the right path to help your clients find the better solutions.
Yeah, I think throughout Liam ends up being one of those months, right? That, yeah, it's industry and it's kind of a made up month, but it's great for us to have focus again on really getting back to basics, or if we are stumbling, if we haven't had huge growth, looking at tools that could really aid and help us. So having our information on conversation starters and overcoming objections, we're going to break down these audiences for you. We're going to give you the ways to get into a different routine with an expanding client base. And then we've also set up a series of sales ideas, which again are tools that are going to break down these demographics even more and illustrate not only their need, but what product we feel would best fit their need, because ultimately we all know it is going to end up a product at the end of the day because we have such a gap here. After you kind of go through these personas, you go through the conversation starters and how you overcome objections. We put together a life insurance brochure. It's not just a brochure on general life insurance. It gets into the fact finding you need. It gets into how do I ask and structure those questions in the right way. And yes, for us here at Assurity, we are structuring all these materials really around a focus on women for this year. We really think that sometimes we as a marketing department or as the ivory tower carrier, we can boil the ocean with a ton of stuff and throw it at you. But ultimately, we think having a narrower focus on a bigger unmet need this year might be able to help spur real results for you going into the fall and end up rounding out your year. Last but not least, what we wanted to preview in this webinar, and starting something that we're very excited on, starting on September 4th, we didn't want you to just take advice from us. We wanted to take advice from your peers. We're going to start a podcast which will give you tips from the sales pros, which we have found the females that have sold product for us who have just been doing an outstanding job over the years, really tapping into this market. And they're going to be starting to give you their unique insight on a series that will start September 4th. So I want you to make sure you mark your calendar for that now. Anybody who's attending this webinar, we'll make sure we'll be sending you links to all these materials. This is a little bit of a pregame for Liam. We know it starts in September, but ultimately we want you to hit the ground running. So we'll be sending those things out to you today. But Peggy, that isn't all we have to talk about today.
No, absolutely not. And we do have, as you know, Scott, Assurity has a competitive, comprehensive product portfolio designed to help clients mitigate unforeseen risks. So kind of just a little bit of summary of the products that we have and the products that I think about. We have our term life product, which has accelerated underwriting. So it's a fast, easy process. And one of the great things about our term life, it has fantastic living benefits like the ROP or the critical illness or the disability illness rider to add. We also have a participating whole life policy along with a single premium whole life policy. So that's great, a great solution for folks seeking permanent coverage. But one of my favorite features on these two products is the ability to accelerate the death benefit upon permanent nursing home confinement, which I feel is an invaluable solution to have in your toolkit. We also have a simplified issue whole life. And again, that's a quick, easy process as well. It's a lower face amount. It's a great way to provide coverage for final expenses for those just looking for specifically final expense coverage.
So it looks like we do have a couple of questions that have come in. And ultimately, we'll make sure that those questions are answered, some of which are very individual in need, but we'll get those to those individuals. So if there are any other questions, feel free to shoot them out via the interface.
Perfect. Many of you know about our Fabulous Leaders trip to Maui. Writing life insurance is a great way to qualify. Reach out to your regional sales manager to find out how close you might be. It's not too late to make a plan to qualify. And I'd like to end this with who we are. We're a mutual company. We've been around for 128 years, and we've been helping people through difficult times for that long. We are among Gallup's Great Places to Work. In our culture, our CEO, Tom Henning, believes a balanced scorecard. It's a three-dimensional model of measuring outcomes, whether it be activity-related, service standards, or financial. This model has really helped our associates understand their fit in our organization, and we have some of the highest scores of associate engagement worldwide. And we care about sustainability. We are a LEED certified gold building, which really means we care about the environment and we care about the future of where our world is headed. As an example, we store rainwater under our building. We're proud to be recognized for our sustainability efforts. And last but not least, we are a certified B Corporation. And that's about doing great things for the world. It's not just about making money. It's about doing the right things for the globe we believe we live on and for other people. We were the first company, the first life insurance company to become a B certified corp. I would encourage you to Google it and look at the video because it's really about doing the right thing for the community that we live in and the right thing globally. We really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, and please reach out to your regional sales managers or your regional sales coordinators if you have further questions. Thanks and have a great day.